Hey, this is Corey Barnes.
And this is Lisa Caperton, and you're listening to Her Turn to Talk.
Hey, look what I got.
I don't know what I'm looking at. It's a mat? What is that?
Okay, be careful. It's really sharp. Careful.
What the fuck?
For our
so good?
listeners,
Torture chamber?
Lisa is holding a prickly mat with all kinds of spikes all over it.
I mean, I could have made you this with some Legos.
It's called a spoonk. You ever heard of a spoonk?
I haven't. What is this?
Right? So the spoonk is an acupuncture mat. And it's supposed to be great and, of course, a natural alternative to help ease tension, especially where most people hold stress, of course, like the back, neck, and shoulders. So you're supposed to lay on it.
Have you laid on it?
Oh, yeah. And naked. They suggest naked.
Oh.
The first time I wore it with a shirt.
This has just been on your back, right?
Yeah.
As I'm rubbing.
No, I was not putting any private parts. God, that would be torturous. I'm not into that. I'm not kink into that. So the mat has 6,200 points, and it stimulates the body's acupuncture points, which helps ease stress by releasing endorphins into the body. The most recommended way to use the spoonk is to lie on your back in bed for 30-40 minutes. However, it can treat any sore muscle areas: back, neck, shoulders, head, hips, abdomen. Do not use the mat against your bones. And for best effects, they recommend using it directly on your skin. But I started with just a shirt and pants on.
Yeah. Well, I guess you don't want to
Sharp as fuck.
it would could possibly tear your clothing.
I thought that, but it didn't. It was good with my pants. And I spent many times trying all kinds of different places this morning. So like my hamstrings and my calves, and it's pretty intimidating.
Where do you get this?
Spunk? Right on the website. There's a website.
Wait, it's not called Spunk, is it?
SPOONK. Spoonk.
Spoonk.
See?
Okay, not spunk. That's something different. We don't want to lay on spunk.
No, you don't want to lay on spunk. So there's spoonk.com. You can go there. Some of these acupuncture mat brands insist that using the mat can help you sleep, relieve muscle tension. We already talked about that, and reduce anxiety. The mats also apparently can relieve chronic back pain, reduce the appearance of cellulite, and even cure muscle aches. So I was really interested in this because of all that.
Where did you hear? Did somebody else have one of these and they told you? Or?
Nope. I just found it, and
You're just searching online, and you were like, "Oh, I want that spiky mat."
Yeah, it was only $10. And so I was like, but it's not $10 on the website. They're like $60. So I was like, what the heck is that? And I wanted to learn more about it. And I actually slept on it last night.
For the whole night?
Yep. Bareback. Yeah.
Did you have little marks on you?
Yeah. In the middle of the night, I ended up but I fell asleep on it. And if you go on YouTube and look up other people, how to use the spoonk, these people, same thing. They'll sleep on it. They actually sit in a chair and have it behind them and stuff. So, I did. I found it relaxing. I feel pretty good right now. I spent time on it this morning, and I've been experiencing a little lower back pain, and I have my Achilles tendonitis, which we believe is throughout my whole body.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel good right now, and it's even supposed to, improve, give you little energy bursts through the day. And it's interesting when you lay on it. So it's really intimidating. It's basically feels like a bunch of nails. You're laying on nails.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it looks like.
There's these tiny little spikes. And really, if you put your hand on it, if you grab it, it hurts. But so you lay on it very gently. And then the first few minutes, there's 3 different phases. It's like the phase of this hurts. Oh my God, I keep thinking it's going to go through my skin or something like that. And then there's the phase of now I'm uncomfortable and I'm itchy. It starts to get itchy. And then there's the phase.
This doesn't sound very fun.
And then there's a phase of just complete relaxation. And so it is. There's something about it, and it gets the blood circulating again. And I love it. And so I'm going to keep using my spoonk. And I thought it would be a hilarious thing to talk about on the show because it's such an interesting thing.
I have never heard of it, and I still
use it now.
I don't know. I mean, I believe you, but I'm telling you, We could go into business if we want to make some of these. I got a shit ton of Legos.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like. We could just glue a bunch of those to
can't
mats
really feel
and
it.
bingo,
Yeah.
we'll be millionaires.
I know. So that's a spunk. may alleviate chronic pain. It's
Well,
all about
you'll
the
have-
acupuncture stuff.
Just keep us posted on your spook progress.
I will. And if anyone else has any experience with spunk, drop us a comment on the Facebook page, Her Turn to Talk. All right. So, I got a badass woman today who was introduced to me by another guest.
Okay.
When we had Jackie on, who was into tarot cards and just a really cool human being, she introduced me to a woman named Gala Darling.
Oh, I remember her mentioning her.
Gala is absolutely stunning, and she's covered in colorful tattoos. If you go on her Instagram, all of her Instagram is filtered in pink. She typically has pink hair, kind of a cross between a pink sparkly unicorn and Kat Von D. She is a force of nature, this one. She's beautiful.
What does she do?
So,
What is she?
Her rules for life are: the most important thing is keeping your energy as high as possible. Love can only multiply. Life is an adventure. Everything is here to help you, especially when it doesn't feel that way. And the only limit to creating a sensational life is your imagination and courage. So, growing up in New Zealand, Gala Darling struggled to find her place in the world and began to turn to fashion and online journals as an outlet for self-expression. This eventually blossomed into an exploration of world culture, a love of travel, and a deepening exploration of how all that related to the way people relate to each other. In 1997, Gala's parents gave her a computer with, of course, dial-up modem back then, different times, and she was instantly hooked. And I can completely relate to this. The moment there was a computer in my house, I was hooked. And then when dial-up came and internet access, I was hooked. I mean, I was on it all the time. She taught herself how to code HTML, I did too, and started making websites. She was part of the internet generation that had guest books and cute FTP upload images. So that's like the blinky things. I mean, this is bare bones and like internet days. I was there. I was so there. And I'm telling you, times were different. Like, we're talking bare bones. There was no bloggers. There was no YouTube.
Yeah,
there was.
You know what? You know who doesn't know about this? Zoomers.
Yeah, Zoom. That's right. That's right.
Those fucking Zoomers.
So
They don't know.
and she had to have been in high school around this time. I was, because I remember this. So about 4 years later, LiveJournal arrived on the scene. And LiveJournal was George Olson, if you're out there. George introduced me to LiveJournal, where you could journal and write. So making it so much easier to have an online journal.
And you had one?
Diary. Nope, but my buddy
Okay.
George did, and I would read people's. I never did my own. Teenagers all over the world shared their darkest secrets, weirdest outfit photos, and music obsessions. It was wild and awesome and so much fun. And it was. This was before anybody even had their own websites. Like, just to have these pictures up and like this new world where, wow, I could see what this woman in New Zealand was doing. So for 10 years, Gallo is writing online journals and diaries, learning to build an audience and connect with others without even knowing it, right? Because again, she's not following anybody at this time. There was
Right.
no one to follow. Now remember, the blogging world didn't exist. And Gala decided to move to New York City with one suitcase when she was 24 years old and used radical self-love to heal from an eating disorder and depression. Frustrated at the almost entirely external focus on feeling good, Gala began to write more about what she calls radical self-love. Literally, live blogging may be the world's longest book online. So you could just pages, right,
Yeah.
of this online journal. And starting a deeper conversation about the way people, especially women, relate to their own bodies, senses of esteem, and each other. So this was about 2007? No. Yeah, 2007.
Is this from her website? Or is this an
2007.
article that you're reading about her?
From her website. And then I wrote my own research about her, but most of it, yeah, it was all gathered from her website. So Gala describes life without depression like the moment when the Wizard of Oz flicks from black and white to Technicolor. Everything has so much more beauty and meaning. Gala is wild about showing women that they can totally revolutionize their lives, that they can feel good every single day, and that their only limit is their imagination. So, I guess I got my dates wrong, but that's okay. Because in 2006, people started making the jump from LiveJournal to their own websites. Gala created galadarling.com with a new vision, not a journal, but a blog with quote unquote blog. She was the first one to do this, or one of the first, with articles that would help people. Galadarling.com took off like wildfire. Within 6 months, Gala had a column in Cosmo magazine, Cosmopolitan, and was being invited to lunches with Louis Vuitton so they could ask her about how the best way to work with bloggers to their advantage, because it would start this whole idea of free marketing or paying the people who are already writing online to market their things. Blogging and the marketing world collided, and Gala was one of the first to be discovered and start doing these things. So, I mean, it just blew open a whole new world. I mean, to go from Cosmo to Louis Vuitton, I mean, you can only imagine where things started going. So Gala Darling is now a speaker and an author. Her first book, Radical Self-Love, A Guide to Loving Yourself and Living Your Dreams, was published by Hay House, has been translated into 4 languages, and became an instant #1 bestseller. She has been teaching Radical Self-Love, a selection of powerful techniques and tools which help women transform their lives, for close to a decade. Her site, galadarling.com, helps a million women a month find their voice, live without fear, and fall in love with life. On her site, you can find her blog on self-love advice, such as 2 daily habits that are holding you back from being a badass warrior goddess. Style, beauty. If you go on her Instagram, you'll see she's very stylish and very beautiful.
I was looking right now, and she is. I mean, she's hot. She's so good. Yeah.
And but very, very eclectic. And a roundup of the best things that Gala has recently read. So her recommendations, and of course, travel. She loves traveling. Gala also offers several digital classes on her website, such as the Unicorn Cleanse, Love Rehab, Wonderland Sessions, The Vortex, and Radical Rituals of Abundance. Like, so hip and so in with it, right? Gala has been called a spiritual revolutionary, the oracle of all things mystically glam. I'm fucking loving this. And a modern day guru. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, New Zealand Herald, Teen Vogue, New York Post, Elle, Cosmopolitan, and a countless others.
Cosmopolitan?
Thank you.
That one? Cosmopolitan?
Cosmopolitan. Thank you.
You're like, thank you.
And countless others. Gala has spoken about radical self-love and oh, here we go. Entrepreneurship.
You did
at
it.
Dozens of events across the world. A co-founder of the Blog Academy, she taught over 1,000 women how to build their business through their blog on several continents. She believes in kale and crystals, goal setting and gratitude, kaleidoscope color, and kicking ass. You can find Gala Darling on Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, and galadarling.com. Today on our show, we are having Linn Rivers come and talk to us. Linn is a trauma recovery coach and a mentor, an NLP master leader. She is all about empowering you to live your journey authentically by connecting to mind, body, and spirit. We're also going to learn more about what a death doula is all about. Welcome, Linn.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. So glad you're here today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Truly.
And for our listeners, would you introduce yourself and let us know a little about you?
Absolutely. My name is Linn Rivers, and I am a trauma recovery coach at this time. I actually help people who are navigating life and trying to step into their power, but have trauma that has been holding them back, regardless of if they're aware of the trauma or not. You know, we go through things as children, and we rarely acknowledge that something that seems insignificant can have a really strong impact on our lives and what we do or don't do as we become adults. And so my job is to go in and find those traumas and help them navigate it so they can leave it behind and move forward in life.
And was this did you just come through a transition of a healer of some sort and now into a different position in your work, or what?
Yes, yes, and I am actually in another transition. So my whole life has been surrounded by the healing arts. I started off as a functional medicine nutritionist and helping people heal naturally through food and diet and spiritual growth, and really healing on a deep level, mind, body, spirit. It's really important to tap into all three. And I started that when I was 18. My mom, who passed away of colon cancer when she was only 40, that was kind of that message for me, like, oh, people don't have to do this. Like, there's a better way. And so I stepped into holistic nutrition, and then I became a yoga instructor and really tapped into Reiki, which I had been doing since I was a child, just not knowing that it was an actual modality. And then I stepped into more coaching, relationship coaching, a bunch of different aspects of coaching, and then trauma work and massage therapy. I did massage therapy, somatic release as well. So this has all been kind of like a progression up to what I really want to do in this world, which is work with people surrounding death. And I actually just signed up for a death doula course starting in March. And that is I think my life goal is to teach people about the beauty surrounding death. And so this is like a really big transition that I'm stepping into.
I saw that on your Instagram, and it had like hashtag death doula.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I want to talk about that.
Yes.
What made you have that calling? Because I, at one point in my little path, I was going to go to nursing school and doing that. And when people would ask me what kind of nurse I wanted to be, I was always thought I wanted to be a hospice nurse.
Okay.
And for me, it was like, there's all these joys around being all these different types of nurses. There's also very difficult types of nurses, but not a lot of people are drawn to that because it is hard emotionally. But at the same time, I'm like, well, you bring all this joy into the giving of life and in these other areas. And why can't you be with someone? Like, this is a very important moment in someone's life, just as any other, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's like, why wouldn't you want to be there to help guide them through that and make it as joyful and as easy and loving as possible? Is that like, what drew you to that?
Well, I have lost a lot of people in my life. My journey with death started, when I was young. When I was 1 in 3, I almost died of pneumonia. And that had actually started a lifelong fear of love, because my family, when they would tell me that they loved me, it would all be in fear, crying over me and like hoping that I made it through. So it became this like, oh, fear and love like are the same thing, right? And so it started a very long path of fearing love. And when I was 8, my grandma, who is my favorite person, she died right after I told her, I love you. It was the first time I had ever said it, and she died right after. So it was kind of like this. And as a child at that age, you're basically like a little narcissist. Your
Right.
brain doesn't know how to distinguish something good versus your fault. And so I thought I killed her. So that continued the never say I love you. And I continued to lose a person in my family every 2 years. It was, my grandma at 8, then my other grandma at 10, then my uncle at 12, then my mom at 15, then my, a good friend of mine, and then another friend. And then I lost my partner to colon cancer, the same cancer that my mom died of. And so it was like this progression of death. And I eventually started seeing like, there's something to this. I'm not experiencing this just to constantly lose. There's something in this for me. And every time I would lose somebody, there would be some beautiful message behind it. Like my mom, it was teach people how to eat better, how to be more healthy, and, the joys of living. And all of these people who came into my life, it was like this reminder, like death is hand in hand with life. You can't have one without the other. And people become so terrified of dying that we forget to live. We become so afraid of dying that we forget that, oh, but right now we are alive. And yes, the other side of that is death. But how can we bring more awareness to the fact that death is our ultimate gift of living? It's when we can remember that, oh, we're going to die. Like there's no getting past that. We are all part of that existence. And when we can step into that, we can really step into our lives and live it more fully. And I really want to help people access that, and when I downloaded that information, I was like, okay, it's time to step into this. All of a sudden, I was no longer afraid of relationships because I realized that I had been calling in sick people because I wasn't stepping into my power as far as like what I can help people with. And so I kept drawing them in. I kept getting these people who had the same issues and I was living out the same patterns. And I was like, okay, I really need to step into this as a profession. Otherwise, this is going to keep happening because I am calling in these people and they're coming in the only way I'm allowing them to. So that is what has been my calling. And now I'm actually like really moving forward with it. And ever since I took that step, it's just been a like continuous uphill, like it's time. So
Meant to be.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is a death doula?
Yeah.
Like what do you do?
So a death doula is genuinely helping people step into the next transition of life. It's rather they are ill and they have just been diagnosed with a terminal illness and they are at that point of just exploring like, what does this mean for me? What's going to happen? How can I be more at peace with this? You're there through the whole process. You're there for the family. You're there to help them grieve and to understand it and how they can help their person in their life, whoever is dying, be more comfortable while they're leaving. And you're walking them through death. Literally, you are at their side and you're holding their hand just as you would someone who is bringing a baby into this life, and you're there with them and you're making sure that they bring that life into existence. You're helping this other person step into the other world, and that could mean so many different things for different people. So it's really just being there for them in the space that they are able to understand it while giving them hope and support and knowing that they're going to be okay and that their family is going to be okay.
Have you already started doing this? Or are you still training into this?
So I am just starting the training. So I am in the midst of a lot of reading, which you saw my post. It was the books that I have to read. I have 4 books that I have to get through. And it's been a really beautiful, there is actually the way it happened was super synchronistic. And the day after I had that download of like, you need to do this, like it's time, I was like, okay, let me find my program. And I remembered that my friend Wooji, who lives in North Carolina, had posted his death doula certificate. And I was like, that's the one I'm supposed to do. I was like, I just know it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be traveling to North Carolina to do this program for a little while. And so I went and I Googled the one that he did, and turns out it's right down the street on Arapahoe here in Boulder, Colorado. Wow. And I actually reached out to the founder because I was like, there's something about her. I saw her picture. I knew that this was the program. And so I reached out to her personally, and she called me back and she's like, I don't usually call people back because I have all my staff do this. She's like, but there's something about you that I felt we needed to connect. And I was like, yep. And she's like, and so here we go. So
wow.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
I'm blown away because I had that same feeling like before we started recording. I had that same feeling like I need to meet her. There's something about her, And that's wow. I had no idea. It's really something else. I mean, what a special and beautiful role to play in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I'm fascinated by death. I like, I'm so interested and fascinated about moving up to death and then what happens after death. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by the human body. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this before. Like I hope I get a chance this February to go to my second cadaver lab.
Oh, wow.
And I just love, there's just something not only to explore the human body, but to be with a body, I don't know, afterlife. And this place that I have gone to, it's up in Longmont, and they have a very sacred and spiritual thing going on in the basement of this funeral home. And, when you walk in, they ask, please say, a little prayer or a positive intention for, the person who is here on the table today. There's always candles lit, and and they typically know they're not just Jane Does or John Does or whatever. That typically will have a background in history about these people. And so to be right there for that transition in general, there's just something very, very interesting and intriguing and mysterious even, right? About
Wow,
what
yeah.
you're going to do with these humans.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Have you been, you have experienced these deaths. Were you able to be with anyone during that transition at that time?
So my grandmother, yes, I was there the second she took her breath. Everyone else I was away from, and I felt like it was very purposeful.
Yeah.
There's something to be said. So first off, with the cadaver lab, I would love to go with you. Like that's,
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean,
send you the information. They're fantastic.
yeah, I am so the human body, I feel like once we leave it, we remember like it is just a body. Like it
Right.
literally, we are just utilizing it while we're here. And so when you're looking at this and you get to like actually like realize like, oh, this is what our body does, and it becomes our body. Like it's not like that's us, that wasn't that person, and we just get to play with it. It's kind of fascinating. But with that, my grandma was the only one who I was actually physically present with. I feel like it's hard to remember one of my friends who passed away from a brain tumor because I was like in a really dark space. So I couldn't remember what happened.
Yeah.
But everyone else, it seemed very purposeful that they could not be there. And I think it was because I had to evolve and understand death before I could actually be part of that process with people. Because I had PTSD from losing so many people, that being in that process would have probably pulled me away from wanting to have anything to do with it.
Right.
That early on in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my grandfather died at our home. Like we had brought him home, and so we did hospice in our house. And so but I was probably 14 or 15 and not really, I didn't really connect with that moment like I wish I would have. But I think back and I'm like, oh, how lovely for him, because we did have my aunts and uncles, like everyone was there around him. And I think that's a very special thing. And I don't understand, I guess it's almost taboo. It seems like to talk about like it, people shy away. And I think it is fear, right? It's this fear of not knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
And the fear of, is it painful or how is it going to happen? And all of those kinds of things. Again, it's just the unknowns.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? And I think it's, important work to have somebody come in. And I think it's hard when it's your loved one. Maybe you can't get past that or see that, but to have somebody on the outside come in and help guide you through that, like how beautiful and what a gift that must be,
Yeah.
And I got a question.
Sure.
You've mentioned that you have psychic spiritualities, abilities, modality, right?
Yes, and I was actually going to bring that up.
Go right
Yes.
ahead. I'm
Yes.
totally interested in that.
So, with you speaking about your, how did I incorporate those people who were dying, or for me, my near-death experiences, my personal. So when my partner was diagnosed with colon cancer, I was actually dying of liver failure. And she had to move back to Oregon to be with her family. And I stayed behind, and I had to be alone once again in this deep healing process. And there was the one day where I was crawling across my floor to get a glass of water, and it took me like 15 minutes to get like 5 feet. And I went back to my bed, and I felt this like sense of openness. And the first time where I was just like, I can die right now and this is okay. Like I'm ready. Like I didn't have any concern about my dogs, which was the only thing I had been concerned with. Like if I die, what's going to happen? Are they going to be found? And in this moment, I was just like, no, it's okay. It's totally fine. They'll be taken care of. And it was in that moment that I actually had 2 spirit guides come through, very clear as day. And they told me exactly what I needed to do. And I woke up like, I have no idea. Time was kind of weird at that point, but I woke up with this knowing that you need to do this. And I actually had the energy to get out of bed to do it, which was even more surprising. And I started the process, and that started my healing journey. But more so, I can tap into, so when my partner died, I didn't know, they did not tell me, but she came to my dream. And this is where I can communicate with, I have communicated with every single person who has passed away. They come in, they talk to me, they give me guidance. With Bonnie, who my partner, she came in and she would take me out on dates for 6 months. We got to do this where it was just like every once in a while we'd get to see each other, and it was as clear as day. Like it was exactly as it was in reality. But the last day, she's like, I can't visit you anymore. And I was like, okay, I understand. And literally her friend like was announced that she's going to be having her baby soon, right after like I had that thing with Bonnie. And so I was like, okay. It was like, I unfortunately feel that she was coming back in. Like that was her,
Wow.
yeah. And so that is like where a lot of my psychic abilities, I can dream about things that I need to do, where it's going to be. I meet people in my dreams before I meet them in reality. And it's always been that way. And I've always been extremely intuitive. When I meet somebody, I can tell like what's going on in their body. Are they healthy? Is there something and that can be really challenging because there's people who I know where I look at them, I'm like, there's something going on with you. I need to tell you this. But it's also not my place unless they come to see me. So I've had to learn to navigate my intuitive guidance and when I'm supposed to step up and when I'm not. So
does it kind of go hand in hand? Because it almost feels like you're like an empath, right?
Exactly.
Like you can get these feelings. I just totally lost my train of thought. But I do have one more question before we like get to, I don't want to get too far off and I forget because I feel like it's an important question. And you may or may not know the answer yet because you're just starting your training.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it would be very important. And I wonder if they teach this, and if you know if they teach this, on what the doula does to protect or, take care of their mental health when going through this. Because I can imagine, especially being an empath and picking up on that, you're just taking in this energy from these people and
Compassion.
yeah.
fatigue.
And how do they teach you how to deal with that part of it?
I'm sure they do, but as an empath, that's something that I have the second I walk out the door, I have my protection, that I put on. And I think it's very important to know that you don't have to take on that energy. You only take on that energy if you choose to,
Right.
If you don't know what you're doing. And that's why this is not for everybody. Like a lot of people don't know how to shut off other people's energies and they don't know how to protect themselves. And so something like this would not be for them. But you only attract that and bring that on if you're willing to. If you're like, oh, I'm going to take on this person's energy and that's not me. I've been working through this kind of process with people for so long that it's like, as if I know that I'm not in a safe space to go out, I don't. Like if I feel like I'm too energetically drained and there's something going on, like I make sure to take care of myself before I put myself into a situation.
Well, it sounds like you have done a lot of work for yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not like you were just had this ability. So you obviously had to go through a lot of seeking help on your own to get yourself in this position to be able to know how to do this. And now you can take that on to help somebody else. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because a lot of my journey has been put to do everything alone, to really bring myself out of my own holes, to bring myself up and to not, it's kind of hard to explain. I haven't sought out a lot of help because it's not been that kind of case. Cause I've always had experiences that were like, here's this harsh experience, learn how to get through it. And those experiences, a lot of people haven't even been through. So they weren't able to help me. I would see a therapist and they would be kind of like, I don't know what else to offer you other than what you're doing because they haven't done it. Things that I went through when I was 15, most people don't go through till they're like 50, 60. And so it was kind of like this journey of, all right, Lynn, figure this out for yourself. You need to be a strong person very early on. Like a lot of people won't reach this point till they're in their 60s who would be like, yes, I want to be a death doula or, and the training, yes, the people are typically 60s and up because they're people who can be in that space and not be afraid of it because they're coming to terms with their own death, and I've had to come to terms with my own death several times in this life. And it's like, okay, like, yeah. Right. Sure, I could be there for people.
And no mentors at all with like tuning into the psychic abilities. No mentor.
No, it's always been very like, I remember it like a pinpoint when I was 16 years old and started having like deep dreams. I was dating a obviously not such good person because that was where I was in my life. And I had a dream where this person was with their ex at a very specific time and the address showed up in my dream and the time and the name of the person. And I was able to be like, so who is XYZ? And she was just like, what? What?
Wow.
And that is when everything just started taking off and there was no turning back. It just happened.
You're like a true channel.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah.
And you do. You have there's this aura about you. Yeah. I think that is amazing that this has been mostly a solo journey.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And I love that you talked about kind of my past has been that of like what a shaman would have gone through, right?
That just gave me chills even just like thinking about that, because I really do have a hard time with the shortcut journeys of what shaman practitioners do these days, where they can go to a workshop and, oh, I'm a shaman practitioner. And I'm like, no, like you don't understand what it means. You know, in Native American cultures, their shamans went through a battleground. Like they had to go through like the near-death experiences, and they were the dreamers. They would know where to hunt because of their dreamers, you know, who could go into a dream and find out where the deer were. And they'd be like, okay, this is where they're at. This is where we need to go. This is the time. And their journeys were never easy. And they were usually typically the older generation, right? And so, but my journey started very early on, where it was very purposeful. And while I wouldn't call myself a shaman because I have like so much respect for that word, I do know that my journey has been very traumatic in that sense of you have to go through all of this because you have something that you need to share with the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Love it.
Yeah.
You're going to help a lot of people, Lynn. You are. You're going to help a lot of people. And then, I mean, I feel lucky to know you and to meet you today. So we were talking a little about self-care, what you do on a daily basis. I hear you like to climb.
I love to climb. Yeah, actually, I have a shoot that we're doing after this for climbing. It changed my life. Honestly, it was something that I stepped into after having a near-death experience, because all of a sudden it wasn't so scary. You know, a lot of people don't climb because of the fear of falling, the fear of dying, all of these different fears. And I recognized that fear within myself. And afterwards, I was like, well, I almost died. Like, what is it going to matter? You know, like do something fun. And then I started climbing, and the problem solving that you have to do, they're literally called problems when you're on the wall, and you have to learn how to navigate it. And sometimes you have to stop, and you're sitting there on the wall and you're looking at the route ahead, and you're like, okay, how can I take a different step in order to complete this route? And there's something, it's so profound. It changed my life, and it's like a meditative practice while moving. And that for me is huge. You can't think of anything else when you're on the wall other than just like your hands and where you're going to put them next. And
You climbing inside and outside?
I do. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, I love climbing outdoors. It's one of my favorite things about being here in Boulder. You know, I just moved here almost a year ago in February.
Ooh.
And having the mountains right out back to, oh, look, I could go climb today.
Right.
And it's
Right.
just,
And you can
oh,
almost find anybody to go with you at any
exactly.
time.
Exactly.
I know, it's the Mecca.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. And you also like mountain biking and
I
paddleboarding
do.
and slack
Oh,
climbing.
yes. Yeah. So I mean, I'm up for a lot of different sports. I played sports since I was a kid. I played soccer, baseball, football, hockey. I mean, you name it, I've played it. But now it's water sports. I love being on the water. I love paddleboarding, kayaking. Another great thing about being here in Boulder, there's lakes everywhere for me to do that. And mountain biking, I just recently got back into after several years. Definitely, I already flipped myself over my handlebars. And so that one's one where I'm like, oh, does my body really want this? But in a more gentle approach, I still like it.
That's great. That's great. You know, being in touch with nature, being outside in general, and another way to be in touch with our bodies, right? You know, does
Exactly.
my body really want to do that today?
Yeah.
How am I feeling today to get up on that wall? It's this all-encompassing world that you've built inside you and outside you is really, it's inspiring. There's just, and you're immersed in it. You know, all of these different, you know, medicines and psychological therapy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So my head, you know, it's just wow. Like it's just to be fully immersed is amazing. It's really something else. Where were you before you moved here?
I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I have been wanting to go to
Yes.
Santa Fe. I've been trying to get girls trips set up with my with
We
our
must
friends,
go.
and it hasn't happened yet. I'm like, we need to get to Santa Fe.
Absolutely.
How long did you live there?
Well, so New Mexico has kind of been my home. I was born in El Paso, but I grew up in New Mexico since I was about 8 years old. And I moved around so much. I've lived in 16 different cities, and I kept ending up back in New Mexico, and I think I needed to heal there. But this last time around, I only moved back to talk about the psychic abilities and my ability to connect to source. I was in Austin, Texas, And I woke up eyes wide open one day with the voice that said, you need to go back to Santa Fe. And I trust my intuition so much that I was like, okay, like it's time. And I will go back there. So a week later, I was back in Santa Fe. Then a week later, my dad died. And then a week later, I was in the hospital with a ruptured appendix.
Oh, wow.
And so I was there for several months healing. And then I was like, it's time to go to Boulder. So this last stint was like my last, I feel like, my last wrap up of heal, and you could come and visit. You don't have to be here anymore.
Oh.
Yeah.
You mentioned intuition
Mhm.
and how you trust it
Mhm.
so much. And I watched your face as you said, I believe that you believe in your intuition. Do you have any difficulty in distinguishing self-will versus that intuition and that kind of higher power voice?
I think for myself, because I am so tapped into it, I walk that line of, the spiritual and the physical world so easily that I don't even have to pay attention to that anymore. And so I feel like I put something out, and if the universe provides, then I know, like, okay, step forward, and just continue to step forward. I feel like it's a dance with the universe.
Yeah.
You have to put something out there that you're interested in, and the universe will be like, yep, this is a great path, and you'll be guided, and you'll take the steps, and then it takes a step, and so I found myself like in that place where I no longer have to be like, is this just me, my ego, or is this a higher power? I work with my higher power to complete what I want to do in this life. And there are, many things where I've thought about the death doula for a very long time. And it's not even so much the death doula, more so than talking to people about death is the ultimate goal for me. But I've thought about that for several years, and it's just now taking form. Like I've been given like coaching, same thing. It took me, I think, 6 years from the time that I had the thought and the notion to the time that I actually started. And so it's just kind of like this progression of like, okay, I hear you, and I'll know when to step forward.
Yeah, that gift of clarity.
Yeah.
I want that.
When you were growing up, were you always having this kind of spiritual kind of connection, or is this something that kind of came later after going through different traumas? Like, what kind of child were you? And was anybody else in your family? Like, did you have an inspiration from someone else that kind of guided you in this path?
Well, the funny thing is, so we have been going through a lot of my old videos for the documentary, and seeing myself as a child, I felt very serious. Like if you saw me, like I was very aware, very happy, but also very much like observant of everything around me, and had this like really calming presence. I was looking at myself, I was like, who is that child, and why, why was she already there? But it makes sense when you think about the experiences that I had early on. And I was talking about fifth dimensions and things when I was like 12 years old, not having any clue. I was just like, oh yeah, there's another dimension and this is what it's like. And I can still remember having that conversation with someone and them looking at me being like, what? And not having I didn't have anything. I found out that my mom was actually a really spiritual person. I had a conversation with my dad, and I was telling him these things about what I do, and he's like, that's really interesting. He's like, your mom was into crystals and all of this stuff, and he's like, here, I'll give you her crystals and her, her books and everything, and found out that my mom was also very tapped in. I just had no idea because I didn't get to know her at that point in my life before she died.
Oh, cool. So maybe she's kind of been guiding you this whole time in a way, to down this path.
She's definitely a guide of mine. Yeah. I think she brought me in though, specifically for,
And did you start out like, we have people sit over here in the chair and they talk about, oh, well, when I finished high school, I wanted to do this. And then I went to college and then I changed my mind and then I did this and then I did this. Is this kind of path of helping people the path that you wanted to do?
It wasn't what I thought I was going to do until my mom died. And then I was like, oh, I want to help people heal naturally. And so they could see like the truth behind the medical system and what they actually do in the hospital and how they actually make us sicker. And that is where my passion for helping people really came, because I started healing myself with things that doctors have just been keeping me in a locked in pattern. And I was like, oh my God, like I can share this, I can do this. And that's where my journey started. But I was a mess. I mean, you look at all of the people who like, oh, I've done this in life and this. I've been everywhere from working in restaurants, working in retail, working at MCOR and Intel, building solar panels for NASA, like all of this just across the board, not feeling like I fit in. I was like, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. This isn't what I'm supposed to do. And I knew that I was supposed to be doing something bigger and that was more meaningful than just going to a job, getting a paycheck. And so I was constantly just in and out of jobs. I was a mess the majority of my life. Yeah.
Well, well, me too.
And that's okay.
Well, it takes what it takes to get us where we need to be, right? Like that's part of life's journey sometimes.
Yeah.
We can't all just come out knowing what we're supposed to do in life.
Right.
And we evolve.
Exactly.
We evolve as people and
Constantly growing. Constantly
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the
hopefully.
goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
The trauma work, the trauma recovery work. Is it mainly just with women and children?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I really want to help women step up on their platform because we are leaving behind such a male-dominated society where they were still living for their husbands and they were still living for their fathers and what their families wanted, right? And so while we have made a big transition, we are still stepping out of that. And so to really help women find those triggers that they don't even know exist is so important. And I think with children, I think it's even more important that we help them find their traumas now so they don't have to grow up and be like we did and uncovering all of this hidden trauma that's been holding us back. Like if we can get children to see like, this is what happened and this is what it could teach you. Like, let's work through it now so then you don't grow up having to uncover everything and live in really traumatic patterns.
And it is the actual like techniques or not techniques, but when you meet with these folks one-on-one, what kind of therapy are you doing? Is it I think, did you say you do hypnotism stuff or
Yes.
what is it? Do you go out in the nature? What kind of things do you do? Are you in an office? What does that look like?
So it's basically, I do coaching. So it's coaching, hypnosis, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and really tapping into the subconscious. So it's quick transition. So, and with mentorship as well. And so it's a mixture of everything. And the beautiful thing about this is you could take someone who's been in therapy for years, working on this problem for years, and then basically just having to go back to the therapist because nothing's actually shifting. With neuro-linguistic programming, it taps into the subconscious to the point where you can trigger the neurological system to reprogram. And so things that you have been living with for years will transition within a week. Like it's a drastic transition compared to therapy, which is why I stepped into coaching. Instead, they're both necessary, but coaching really helps a person move forward instead of keeping them stuck in like understanding a past issue.
And it's through words, neuro-linguistic? So is there certain keywords?
Yes. Yeah. It's all about techniques and getting a person to access their visual state, their auditory state, kinesthetic states, and really getting them to understand like how they feel. So if I ask you, for example, like, do you remember going to a favorite park when you were young? Can you remember that?
Sure.
Remember one specific thing.
Okay.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay. How old were you?
I must have been like
Right.
8.
Okay, so when I asked you how old you were, you had to look up to the left. So you are a visual person, and so you're able to access your visuals more than you are your kinesthetic. And so you tap into that with somebody, so then that way you know how to speak to them and find out like how they best correlate with you.
Cool.
Yeah. And so then you do that and you start accessing cues and getting them to respond to questions that make them like switch a neuron in their subconscious. So for example, the other day I was talking to a woman who's been going to therapy. And so it's just been all about bringing up her past and why she's in relationships. And I asked her, well, why do you keep seeing this person if you know X, Y, Z? And she stopped and she looked up and she's like, I don't know. And that question alone triggered something to where she now has to look at it from a different perspective. And that is going to, in the next few days, it's going to make her shift something super drastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like a call to action almost.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it works. I
like
know
that.
it works.
Yeah.
I know it works. Where did you, was there training and certification?
Yes.
What did that look like?
So it's actually an international program online. And so you are in class with people from all over the world. I was in class with people from Australia, India, Africa, just all over the place. And it's INLP Center. And so it literally, I'm still actually in the program for certain parts of it for advanced hypnotism. And it's a really powerful program, but that's where I went.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating.
I have a quick question on, since we're talking about this, and I found it interesting. We've had somebody else on here that talk about accessing these traumas or crystallizing moments is what she called them, and how that word trauma, you hear it and we think it has to be some big thing, right? It has to be a death or some traumatic car accident or whatever. But it's not always the case.
No.
And so how do you go about helping somebody figure out what that is? Like with this woman, it's on a past podcast, Christine Lackey's. And she talked about, a woman in a grocery store that as a small child couldn't find her mom for, and how that one moment had progressed this big fear of people leaving and not being, that kind of thing. How do you get someone to access that if they don't even know what their trauma is?
See, and that's the beauty of it. And that's why I do what I do, because so many people think that, I didn't have anything traumatic happen. But then you're like, okay, so tell me about when you were a child. What was your father like? What was your mother like? And getting them to really dig into like their everyday existence as a child. And then they start finding like these little loopholes in their story of like, oh, wait a minute, my mom didn't come home for a few nights, or remembering these things that, like I said, seem so insignificant to them. And then they start realizing like, wait a second, like that triggered something, because as a child, when your brain is forming, that small thing of like your mom slapping your hand and saying no, like because you tried reaching for the cookie,
right?
Or something that small, all of a sudden as a child, you think like, oh, I did something horrible and this is something that I can never do again. Otherwise, I'm going to be punished. And all of a sudden, that cookie jar is a partner, or that cookie jar is a job, or something that you just cannot reach for because you're going to get reprimanded for it. And so you just really get people to access their past in a very different way. And a lot of times that's triggering happy memories. Like, oh, tell me about this happy memory. And then they start talking about it. And then you start asking like, okay, and how was your mom? Like, was your mom present, or was your dad present? And just like, for me, that's the beauty of having intuition, because I can know where to tap in. I can see with their eyes or feeling and know like, okay, there's something going on here that they're not aware of. And I can jump in and be like, here we go. Like, let's talk about this.
Right.
And then it slowly comes out.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're dealing with someone that has many traumas,
like myself.
Then, and so then what, do you focus on one at a time, or does it have to be that way, or can you tackle several, or how does that work?
The beautiful thing about neurolinguistic programming is it's typically relatable. So one trauma is kind of similar to the other traumas, and we don't even realize it. So our brain creates these neurological patterns that stem from one, and then the next trauma happens. And so it just creates another line of like, oh, okay, we're going to just recreate this pattern over and over. And so when you correct one, it starts already correcting the others, because then you're very aware of what's happening and why that trauma exists. And so then you start tapping into the other aspects of everything. And it's just kind of a natural correlation that people start having.
And do you love working with children in this?
I do.
I would think that would be very fulfilling, that you're helping to get somebody to have these tools at such a young age.
Yes, it's beautiful. And I think I actually just got chills. I think it's one of the most necessary movements, because children, they are literally our future, and we need to set them up so much better than we were set up. I mean, we were messed up children. We lived with such dysfunctional families. A lot of us did.
And so much, we've been learning this, and I know that we've talked about this before, of it's almost this thing of when we kind of, our generations and stuff were growing up, it's like, don't talk about that. Don't talk. It's like that brush under the rug. And I'm so thankful now, because I am a mom of 2 boys, and having the openness of, it's talked about so much more common, of this seeking help and talking, and it's okay to talk. And as a mom of boys, it's okay to cry, and it's okay to have feelings. And I'm so grateful that things are shifting in that area.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for people like you that are doing that work to make it mainstream and to make it out there and known about.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Could you tell me about hypnotism?
Definitely. What do you want to know?
What happens?
Well, so what it is, it's not as scary as it sounds. A lot of people think like, I'm not going to get hypnotized because I don't want someone to have control of me. What it is basically just getting to a completely relaxed state to where your subconscious can be accessed. So I can use really powerful, profound words to seep into your subconscious and to allow that to think like this is reality. So while you're in this relaxed state and I am feeding you these really positive intentions and these words of affirmations and something that you really want to believe is true in your life, I take you to a state of relaxation to where I am talking directly to your subconscious. So when you wake up, your subconscious and I just had that conversation and it thinks it is absolutely the truth. And so you start living in that truth. And that is why so many people who, let's say, want to stop smoking, hypnosis works so well when they fall into that deep trance because it is the subconscious really believing that that is who they are at that point. They are no longer a smoker.
Yeah.
And so when they wake up, that is their, nope, this isn't me. That's not me.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm from Boston. And this just made me, now I realize why I've always been fascinated with hypnotism because in Boston there was a comedy show, a comedy club. And my girlfriends and I would go and see a hypnotist, but he was the sex hypnotist. And he would bring people up on stage and, it would be raunchy. No one was doing anything physical, but talking about it was a hoot. And I was up, we went several times. Me and my girlfriends thought this was the funniest thing. I must have been, could I drink? I guess 21. But I remember I went up there once and I don't remember anything. I remember being relaxed. I remember lights, even thinking about it now. But I remember being up there and then I remember walking off. And that's my only time I remember a quietness, I don't remember speaking or anything like that. And so I think about it now and it's interesting. Nothing was, planted there was no seeds left behind or anything like that. Thankfully, I don't really know. But that's been my only experience with it, and it was so funny, but just interesting because I think about people can stop smoking, they can they could potentially an addiction, can help with that, recover from that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's just so interesting.
Yeah. So stage hypnotism is completely different. It's done for entertainment, and that is pulling people out of trances right away. It's just kind of okay, we're gonna have fun with this, and then we're pulling you out. With intentional hypnosis, it's keeping them in that state, and as they come out, retaining that information. It's way more purposeful. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, the fear that they have around hypnotism is because of stage hypnotism, because you don't remember.
Yeah,
and
you can do silly things.
Yeah,
up there.
Exactly.
That's why we kept going
exactly.
back. But no, that's to hear this other side of things. And this powerful, meaningful, side. That's just, it's so neat.
Yeah. And do you find that people, I'm assuming if they're coming to you for that, then they already have a belief that this is going to work. But do you find that that's a need that has to happen in order for it to work?
For some people, yes. There's a lot of people who don't believe in hypnotism and they're more skeptical. Let's just, for a lack of a better term, however, when people realize that you don't have to be able to fall into a deep relaxation for it to work because the subconscious is receiving this information. Right. It's just like when we watch TV and we have the subliminal messages, that is subconscious programming. And this is why we have such an addictive society, because they know exactly what they're doing. They are programming your subconscious. Right. And so that is all the proof that you need. We are constantly under hypnotism. And that's why it's important to pay attention to what you watch and what you listen to and who you surround yourself with. It's really important because we are always being hypnotized.
Right. We're always taking in this information whether we're paying attention necessarily or not.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so there are people who think that that being hypnotized makes you weak. It actually shows a higher sense of intelligence, being able to tap into that relaxation of being able to be hypnotized. Right. It's actually a sign of intelligence. And so a lot of people who think I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be seen as weak. It's actually a really positive sign to be able to go into a deep trance.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I've been I have been really working on living a clean eating and just clean lifestyle in general. And in your pre-interview questions, you mentioned that you live a very natural, clean, and sober lifestyle yourself.
I do.
What does that look like?
It is me being authentic to life. That is something that I've always kind of been one step ahead of the trends that happen in society. And I just really found that being authentic and present with life in every form is powerful. It's difficult. It's not for the faint of heart. It's being sober and working through the really horrible things that come up in life and to see what's going on in this world and still be like, okay, but I am here and there is still beauty. And to be able to sit in the discomfort and to be able to go and talk to people that you don't know without having to feel like you need to numb or hide yourself. I think that alcohol, it is the most potent drugs, and it is the most used drug, and it keeps us from genuine interaction. People think like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have fun with my friends. And it's like, no, you're not having fun with your friends. You are becoming somebody else in order to have fun with these people. And when people become sober, they realize real quick, like, wait a second, these people who I go out with on a regular, they're not people that I would actually want to interact with on a daily. And so it's like a really profound thing to be sober and to live a natural lifestyle. I eat organically, I eat locally. And it's not about a fad. It's about my personal belief and how I feel like I resonate with this world. And we are natural beings of this earth, right? Our bodies are of this earth. And there are ways that we treat our body that keep us locked into a higher dimension and able to tap into that other side. Or we can do the things that are heavy and keep us down and keep us from experiencing the truth of this world. And for me, it's like, I just couldn't even imagine it being any other way. And it's hard to meet other people who I can connect with because it's such a addictive society of having to have something to numb or an experience that keeps you from, being present with each other. And so it's been a lonely existence at times, but it's also brought me closer to really loving being alone and having myself. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
So, Lynn, tell us about this documentary that you're making.
Okay, so it actually incorporates everything that we've talked about. It's a documentary surrounding PTSD and trauma and my childhood and everything that I've gone through and how it's brought me to where I am and why I'm helping people the way that I do. And it's basically tapping into the fact that, again, trauma, here we are looking at little childhood clips of myself and seeing myself as a normal child is what it looks like, and not being able to see the traumatic events through it. And still knowing that child grew up to be someone who had so many fears and so many things that she didn't know if she could get through. And there were moments in my life where I didn't think I would get through it, but I did. And I have the tools to teach people how to do that and how to really become something from the trauma instead of it, leading to homelessness and committing suicide and not feeling like you have a purpose here in this life. And so just basically living for other people at that point. And this documentary incorporates all of that. It's all about dealing with the trauma and realizing that we all have trauma, even when we think we don't. Even when a family looks perfect, there is trauma in that perfection too. And so we are just like really getting it out there that death happens, trauma happens, pain happens, and you don't have to live in that space of fear. You can become the victim, that you can go from victim to victor is what it's basically the message. And that's the title, is victim to victor. And yeah.
And do you know how people are going to be able to find this documentary?
Well, so
you're not done with it yet, right?
We're not done with it. And there are some great clips that we do have out. And there's one on my Instagram page that you can see. It's just a very small clip, and that alone shows the profound message behind it. We are presenting it to a couple of film festivals. And so we will see. Yes.
Awesome.
We will see.
And so what's the timeline? Are you thinking that you guys will be presenting this to the world?
That's a good question. I feel like very soon, actually.
All right.
We're coming up.
So we can just keep following you and we'll find out when it drops.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. And I think, we're coming up on time, but I think for me, having you sitting here and teaching us about all these new different ways of getting help and helping others, it's been so important. And we've had other people come on. We had somebody come and talk about wilderness therapy and all of these things. And I think it's so important to have some, for us to have different types of people on this show and to realize that there are many different ways of getting help and talking about that it's okay to get help. And I think it's important for people to know that you can seek help however you like, whatever's connecting to you. And if you try, wilderness therapy, you don't find a connection, then try hypnosis. If that doesn't work, then go try this. But like the important thing is that we're trying.
Exactly.
And that it's out there and
Yes.
there you can find the shoe that fits you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you coming and just sharing all of these different things with us and like sharing about hypnosis because I didn't know necessarily how that worked either. And I was
Great.
like, oh, that's awesome to learn.
Yeah,
And
I know listeners are loving this right now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so grateful for you, Lynn. So grateful for you.
It was
If,
so
thank
nice to
you.
meet you.
if listeners
Yeah.
want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So they can actually find me at www.linnrivers.com, and that's Linn, Linn, rivers.com. And you can find me on all social media. Actually, on my website, I have all my connections to social media, videos, blogs, etc.
And we're going to put that on our
And-
website too for your
Yeah.
episode so they can find your links on there as well.
Yeah, and with finishing up with what you were saying as far as finding different modalities that work for people, I think one of the biggest things about living naturally and a sober lifestyle is remembering to invest in yourself. So many people say, well, I don't want to spend that much money on a program. How much do you spend on drinking? How much do you spend on cable? How much do you spend on going out? And are those things helping you become a person? And those are the questions to ask yourself. I've spent so much money investing in programs that I want to do for myself because it betters me as a person and what I want to do in this world. And I think that's one of the strongest things that we can remember. It's like find the modalities that work for you and do them. Like you deserve it. You deserve to better yourself and to become that person that you really want to become.
Yeah,
The
I love that.
complete opposite of the self-destruction,
Yes.
that other,
Yes.
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 That's wonderful.
Thank you. I love that message. And that's a great way to end is that, yeah, hey, we all deserve it. Everybody deserves to find happiness. And,
Absolutely.
yeah. If you have an interesting story, something funny, something sad, something you want the world to know, please email us. We want you to share your experiences with us. We'll take these, we'll collect them, we'll do some episodes sometimes where we'll read them. So if you want to be anonymous, please just let us know. We won't read your name. If you want your name read, then we will. But send us those stories, comments, to info@herturntotalkpodcast.com. And we also ask if you like what you're hearing, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you.